Hello, my name is Dylan Cooper, a student 32942548. I hope you've all had a great semester. And this is my presentation on my professional capability in teaching in culturally responsive ways. So, firstly, I'd just like to introduce myself. So, as previously mentioned, my name is Dylan Cooper, and I'm studying a Bachelor of Education and specialised in physical education. I'm 22 years old and have a strong link to Indigenous people, as I was born and raised in a small town about an hour south of Perth called Pinjarra. The town is rich with Indigenous history and pride, as the suburb still sustains a strong Indigenous presence and culture, having been home to the Pinjarra tribe. I've enjoyed my time at Murdoch studying to be a sport teacher and chose to go down this pathway as I have a passion for inclusive education for all by helping students reach their potential and aim to be a positive influence on youth, just as teachers had on me. I'm a passionate sportsman and have thoroughly enjoyed playing all types of sports my hometown had to offer, but none more than AFL football. I've made strong, everlasting relationships through football, but I especially value the bonds I've made with my Indigenous friends, as they are friendships that may not have developed had we not had the mutual interest of AFL football, the game of footy. After leaving school, I deferred from university for a year because I obtained a sports teacher traineeship at Pinjarra Senior High School through the AFL Sports Ready program initiated by Kevin Sheedy, who's an AFL legend. So I didn't know at the time, but this is where my passion for Indigenous education would begin. I'm currently in my last year of studying before graduation, and I'm preparing to enter my final placement next term, where I'm teaching a Year 1 classroom. The class has 0 Indigenous students, but it's quite multicultural, so I look forward to embedding some of their cultures and beliefs into the class. So my teaching pedagogy and philosophy. So I've developed a teaching philosophy that is built upon personal values and experiences throughout my life as a person and during my time working with Indigenous youth. In my teaching philosophy, I adopt a student-centered democratic teaching approach that puts students' needs and interests first and promotes independent student learning experiences to promote resilience and ownership in students' own education. Through my experiences growing up in Pinjarra and later working at Pinjarra Senior High School, I've become intrigued with Indigenous education, as I am passionate about the effective teaching methods used to engage and enhance the attendance of Indigenous students. A lot of educators may strongly disagree with what I'm about to say, but I think it is important to take a step back from the curriculum and overwhelming the students with content and workload, instead seeking ways to make school enjoyable and teach the students through more informal methods. A program ran at Pinjarra Senior High School that has improved student attendance is the Football Academy, which provides students with more time to play sport and football compared to other mainstream students. The program helps improve Indigenous student attendance as they enjoy playing football and are good at it, resulting in them viewing schooling worthy of their time if they get to play the game they love. This is an example of culturally responsive teaching, as it is a strength-based approach which can be found in the Stronger Smarter Institute created by Professor Chris Serra to improve the educational outcomes for Indigenous students. Football is only one example of the strength-based approach that we could use to improve Indigenous attendance. Other examples schools could adopt would be possibly the arts and drama, so painting and dancing, and just to name a few. So I also believe it is important to build supportive, trusting relationships, not only with the students, but also with the families and extended local Indigenous peoples. Working together with them to promote education and get Indigenous youth to school would provide parents and community members opportunities to gain some cultural capital by keeping them informed and updated with the education system and their students' progression to ensure they feel a sense of belonging and welcomeness which will ultimately extend to their children and make them feel more comfortable and encouraged to attend school. Additionally, I think we should incorporate Indigenous culture into daily teaching routines, which could be something as simple as saying good morning in Noongar, as many schools do in New Zealand with their adopting and promoting the Maori culture. So my professional capability in culturally responsive teaching from the classroom and whole school approach. So I would like to move away from special occasion teaching such as NAIDOT Week and other Indigenous programs sort of thing. Not move away from them, still do them, but I'd like to, as I previously mentioned, use daily recognition as well. So it's with like morning greetings in Noongar, for example. Just so to make it not such a weird thing. I think some students may view it as a weird or out there sort of experience, and then, oh, we've done that, so now we don't have to worry about it. Instead, make it a daily thing, so it's constantly being brought up and acknowledged. Another way I would like to another way to do this in class is building lessons around evidence-informed and improved Indigenous resources that are informative and support the learning needs of Indigenous students, such as Yalanga, traditional Indigenous games and sport, or traditional stories or poems in English to create Indigenous dot paintings in art. I'd also like to, as we do with all students, but in particular with Indigenous students, it's just as important to incorporate differentiation in teaching, to implement or alter instructions and learning tasks so that students are able to participate fully if they speak a different language or just struggling in general. The whole school approaches, I'd like to incorporate, once again, the Noongar morning greetings instead of just me personally as a teacher. I feel like that would be if we had a complete buy-in from the staff and it was extended as a whole school approach that everyone did it, or over the PA even. I think that would be really good. And another example would be naming building blocks after Indigenous phrases such as animals or landmarks that are culturally significant to the area that the school is in, instead of basic terms like building block J1. Also believe including or employing local elders or other Indigenous community members to work at the school as mentors and counsellors would help promote schooling in a positive light. That would be a good step forward in closing the gap. Finally, I think I'd like for the whole school is making school house factions Noongar words. Instead of red faction, it would be murder, or yellow faction would be yunt. And this could be used as a cross-curricular project with the art students designing and creating a mural for each colour faction to be displayed in the school quadrangle. In conclusion, so to wrap it up, I'd like to embed Aboriginal perspectives and needs into my teaching and the curriculum, both as a whole school approach and in my classroom. I'd like to adopt this strength-based approach to improve attendance and engagement of Indigenous students, as I believe this is effective. I'd like to incorporate Indigenous culture into the school ethos and environment through murals and networking with Indigenous locals. And also like to really create an inclusive learning environment to ensure equitable education for all my students. Thanks for listening, and yeah, take care. Cheers.